Lights around the world are turning off for Earth Hour, including at landmarks such as the Eiffel Tower and the Colosseum. This in a bid to spread awareness about sustainability and climate change. Facing off against Israeli tanks and troops, Gaza marks the first anniversary of the Great March of Return. These protests have left around 200 Palestinians dead. Also coming up this hour, the Pope's visit to Morocco is interrupted this Saturday by a man running at the King's car. The two-day trip is aimed at drawing attention to the rights of migrants and relations between Christians and Muslims. Hello, very warm welcome to France 24. Those are our top stories this hour. Now, are you turning off the lights today? Well, as some of you may know, March the 30th has been dubbed Earth Hour, an event organised by the Green Group Worldwide Fund for Nature to raise awareness about climate change. Now, known sites also plunged into darkness this Saturday. They include, as seen here, the Eiffel Tower, the London Eye and the Colosseum. Despite millions of people taking part, however, critics do say that this reduction in power consumption is trivial. Now, for more on this, let's cross over to Vanessa Perez Sirera, who's the Global Deputy of the environmental group WWF. She joins us from Mexico. Thank you so much for being with us. We have Earth Hour, of course, which has gone completely viral, and we have the more recent student protests across the globe. Vanessa, would you say that these campaigns even, they're more symbolic gestures, or do they make an actual difference?
I do think they make a difference, and the difference needs to be bigger, and it needs to be faster. In the past 40 years, we've managed as a species to lose 60% of the biodiversity worldwide, and still, with the pledges that we have on the table from countries, the climate pledges, we are to a future that take us to 3 or 4 degrees average temperature above the pre-industrial periods. And so, of course, that switching down the lights for an hour won't make a difference. Of course not. And the whole idea is connecting us to Earth and connecting us, making awareness that our everyday actions have a big importance on the planet. So, of course, with the alarming rates of still raising greenhouse gas emissions that we thought after 2017 that might go down, and the last year in 2018 they went up again. It's really we are really facing an emergency time in which every action counts. But of course, it's not switching down the lights for an hour which make the difference. It's actually creating a movement. And that's exactly what the students are trying to do. They're trying to raise awareness. They're trying to demand their governments for stronger
You said that
pledges.
This is an emergency, and of course we know that, as you just mentioned, this event only takes place once a year. What other rather urgent steps can we take to scale back human-induced climate change? More briefly, if you can.
Sure, of course. I think as an individual, first, to be political, I think we need to all be engaged in knowing what our politicians are going to do about climate. Of course, there's some trade-offs that they will need to take, and these trade-offs should be minimized, but they will be trade-offs. So if they don't have the backing of the society that tells them, okay, we're ready for you to push towards a stronger climate measures, it's really difficult that they will. So first, be political. Then, secondly, it's the way you mobilize yourself. So get down from your car, get up on the public transport. Third one, you eat less meat. There's just as an adult, we just need 1 portion of meat a week, and that will have a big impact. So take into account what you eat, how you move, what you buy, how much you buy, where it comes from.
I'm just going to interrupt you there because we only have time for one more question. Of course, we could talk about this all evening, but we know that it's been 12 years since the first Earth Hour. How would you say, please, very briefly, our outlook on climate change has changed since the inception of this campaign?
Well, as you know, we have been for about now 24 years negotiating about the deal for climate, which was eventually achieved in the Paris Agreement. So I do think that raising awareness that we need to do something about climate than the politicians. I think it was a big milestone to achieve the Paris Agreement, and now we have to put the Paris Agreement in place. And so I do think that this movement has made a difference in people having awareness that it's not only politicians that should do something about climate, it's every level of society that needs to be engaged and that needs to support climate action.
Every level of society needs to engage. Vanessa Perez-Sirera, thank you so much for being with us here on France 24. Next to the Israeli-Gaza border this Saturday, which was a gathering point for thousands of Palestinians. They were marking 1 year since protests and clashes erupted there. They've been calling for an end to the Israeli blockade and for the right of Palestinian refugees to return to their homes. Now, according to Gaza's Ministry of Health, Israeli forces used live rounds, rubber bullets and tear gas earlier in the day to disperse crowds, killing 3 teenage boys, all aged 17. Ivana Skatola has the story.
Gathering in their thousands at the border with Israel, Palestinians hold a mass rally to mark the 1 year anniversary of the weekly Great March of Return protests. Israeli troops fired tear gas across the border as Gazans hurled rocks and explosives at soldiers in violent exchanges which turned deadly.
Our protests are still peaceful. We want to confront them in a minor way by throwing stones so we can get our message across and teach them a lesson that we want to go back to Palestine.
The protests call for the lifting of the Israeli-Egyptian security blockade on Gaza and for Palestinian refugees to be able to return to ancestral homes in what is now Israel. According to the UN, nearly 200 Palestinians and 1 Israeli soldier have been killed in the protests which started on the 30th of March 2018. Israel's use of live fire has drawn criticism from the UN and rights groups, but the country says it has no choice but to use deadly force to stop Palestinians crossing the border. The clashes come as Egypt is trying to broker a ceasefire between Israel and the Hamas leadership. Efforts have been stepped up in recent days after renewed violence earlier this week.
Turning our attention to Morocco, where shortly after the arrival of Pope Francis, a man was seen running towards a car carrying the Moroccan king, but he was swiftly seized, as seen here, by security forces. Now, the pontiff is on a 2-day trip aimed at boosting Christian-Muslim ties, this while also showing solidarity with migrants at Europe's door.
Pope Francis arrived in the Moroccan capital on Saturday in what is the first papal visit to the country in 34 years. He was greeted by King Mohammed VI. The two leaders then took separate vehicles to head in tandem to a welcome ceremony at the Hassan Tower Mosque and Mausoleum, where the two were eager to stress the importance of interfaith dialogue.
Dialogue between the Abrahamic religions is insufficient. At a time when paradigms are shifting everywhere and concern all matters, interreligious dialogue must evolve too.
Morocco has shaped itself as a country of religious tolerance in a region torn by militancy. The Pope opened his remarks by praising the King's efforts to spread a moderate form of Islam and called for interfaith solidarity to overcome the threat of religious extremism.
We are being called to follow this path tirelessly, to help one another overcome the tensions and misunderstandings, the facades and the stereotypes that lead to fear and opposition. In this way, we open ourselves up to a productive and respectful collaborative spirit, which is essential in fighting against fanaticism and fundamentalism.
The Pope also visited the King Mohammed VI Institute, a school that teaches imams how to counter extremism. Also on the schedule for Saturday, meeting migrants at a centre run by the Catholic Church's Caritas charity. Morocco has become a key departure point for migrants trying to reach Europe, and the Pope has made the issue a hallmark of his papacy. Francis will celebrate Mass on Sunday in Rabat's sports stadium. before returning to Rome.
That's it for us. Thank you for watching.